the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. I started feeling the cramps shortly after the service began. I was the assistant priest at the large Church of the Redeemer in Baltimore, one of many at the altar in front of 500 parishioners, and I was 7 weeks pregnant. The cramps continued through the gospel and the sermon. By the time we got to the piece, I whispered to the rector that I needed to go to the hospital, and I slipped out back. For the prior 2 weeks, my former husband and I had been euphoric. We'd been looking forward to having children, and this was our first pregnancy. At the same time, some early testing was not good regarding the embryo's growth. It was unclear that this would be a healthy pregnancy. When we got to the hospital, my husband and I got the news we had feared. The embryo was dying. I was in the active stages of a miscarriage. They said I would need a D&C. What's that? I asked. It refers to dilation and curettage, a procedure to remove tissue from inside your uterus. It is the procedure used for first-term abortions. But it is also a regularly used medical procedure for women who have had or are in the process of having a miscarriage. We were shocked and in grief over this turn of events. I remember asking the doctor if she was sure there was no chance of the embryo reviving. She said no. She also said that while I could wait for the pregnancy to fully terminate on its own, it would mean further cramping, and I would still need to come in later for the D&C to clean things out to prevent infection. My husband and I agreed to the D&C. It went uneventfully, and as a result, I remained healthy. And 3 months later, I joyfully became pregnant with Duncan. In other words, I had an abortion. A D&C is a commonly performed medical procedure which is just another name for an abortion. I share this story because today, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, there are those who want to criminalize D&Cs. Doctors and women would go to jail for having the medical procedure I had for miscarriage, or for having abortions when suffering an ectopic pregnancy, or when having in vitro fertilization, needing to abort several embryos in order that the others might survive. Hospitals will have to check with their lawyers before performing many common women's health procedures. Other concerns regarding the overturning of Roe v. Wade include situations like the one recently shared on the news of the 10-year-old girl needing an abortion, which now in many states would not be permitted. In addition, studies show that abortions go up when poverty goes up. They go down when poverty goes down. Women get abortions not because they are evil, but because there are no other options available to them and their families. If one is truly concerned about babies, they'd be at the forefront not of anti-choice legislation, but of advocating for universal health care, extended parental leave, free diapers, free formula, universal preschool, pre-K, and after-school care. But these are currently not available, and millions of women with unplanned pregnancies are left in the cold. Or consider that in Judaism, life begins when one takes breath. So forcing Jewish women to abide by conservative Christian laws, preventing them from having abortions before a fetus is viable, is denying Jews their religious freedom. These are just a small smattering of the thousands of moral and appropriate reasons why one may have an abortion. The issue of abortion is filled with gray areas. This was the strength of Roe v. Wade. It gave women involved the agency to weigh the various issues within the gray area and come up with the best option for her and her family. The anti-choice movement pretends that the whole abortion issue is black and white, that it's about forcing morally weak women not to murder their children. This is untrue and offensive, because the issue is not black and white. The morality of abortion often, not always, but often falls in a gray area. And to deny the gray area becomes itself immoral. The Episcopal Church officially says that we believe that legislation concerning abortions will not address the root of the problem. Again, because it makes it black and white. We therefore express our deep conviction that any proposed legislation on the part of national or state governments regarding abortions must take special care to see that the individual conscience is respected and that the responsibility of individuals to reach informed decisions in this matter is acknowledged and honored. What does Jesus say about abortions? Nothing. What does Jesus say about when life begins? Nothing. What then does Jesus talk about? He talks about the love of God, care for the poor, healing of the sick, lifting up the lowly, loving our enemies, forgiveness and love, equality and agency for all who are currently alive and breathing. And today we hear the very popular, appropriately popular, and wonderful story of the Good Samaritan. Most hear it just as a parable that we should be nice to people. And that's a fine message. The story of the Good Samaritan is much deeper than that. The parable sets out to answer the question, who is my neighbor? And a key part of the story is that the Samaritans are a tribe of people who are the enemies of Jews. Samaritans and Jews hate each other. So when the Jewish man is robbed and left beaten by the side of the road, it's dreadful that the fellow Jews, the priest, the Levite, pass him by without helping. But the shocker comes when it is the enemy, the Samaritan, the unclean foreigner, who helps the injured Jew. Jesus asks, who was the neighbor? And the crowd responds, the one who showed mercy. In other words, even our enemies are our neighbors. We are expected to show love and mercy to them as well. But the surface labels we put on people like foreigner, heretic, unclean, are not what determine who our neighbors are. Everyone is our neighbor. Just as the Samaritan modeled, we need to reject labels and show mercy to all. Sometimes that mercy means allowing women to make choices that we don't like because we don't have the whole story. Jesus' parable pointed out that rigid Jewish and Samaritan laws which create separation between groups of people are laws which lack love and mercy. They don't get at the gray areas. Over and over again in his ministry, Jesus ignores laws in order to show love. He healed people on the Sabbath. He touched the unclean. He spoke with women. He welcomed the foreigner. Over and over again, Jesus showed that black and white laws don't address the complexity of the human experience and where the expression of love actually lies. Our country's overturning of Roe v. Wade in order to install draconian anti-choice laws is another example of lack of love and mercy, because the issue is not black and white. The morality of abortion often falls into a gray area, and to deny that gray area becomes itself immoral. Going forward, we must engage our politicians and each other with love and truth and mercy. We must care for those who are facing unbearable pregnancy choices and support their decisions. We must protect medical workers. We must endeavor by the grace of God to create a country which offers health, education, and compassion for all children from the moment of birth, regardless of race, creed, or socioeconomic status. Like the Good Samaritan, we must love and respect those with whom we disagree, while honoring our truth. I do not know what the future holds, other than ultimately it is in the hands of God. And I take great comfort